Okay, so in this video, we're going to be looking at CiteSpace. CiteSpace is a powerful tool that you can use to also carry out bibliometric analyses, and it's a great way to look at emerging trends and intellectual turning points, as the creator Xiaomei Chen calls them. And you can also look at the evolution of certain themes or publications or citations as well. So this is a CiteSpace webpage. So you can see here, you can download the basic version, which is free, or you could also purchase the standard or advanced packages. And so before we get started on creating a map on CiteSpace, I'd just like to go over some resources that might be helpful when you carry out your literature review or bibliometric analysis. So one of them is Xiaomei Chen, who is the creator of CiteSpace. His Twitter page has a lot of examples of different bibliometric networks that are worth looking into. Another useful resource I recommend is one of his papers as well. It's called A Practical Guide for Mapping Scientific Literature. And I just thought that this was a very thoughtful and well-written paper, and it goes into the basic concepts behind bibliometric mapping through CiteSpace. And this paper also gives a lot of insight into the applications behind bibliometrics analyses. You can use it for yourself to get you started in a field and become more well-versed, especially when we live in a time where there are thousands of papers being published every year. It can be hard to catch up and figure out which publications are the most worth looking into, or which are shifts or trends in the literature that you're looking at as well. Another application of bibliometrics is creating literature reviews and meta-analyses. And another application of bibliometrics he mentioned was a more personal story of how a group of students gave a retired professor a bibliometric map indicating the trajectories of his research. So in that way, you can see this sort of evolution of different terms or publications over time. And you can also look at the intellectual structure of that field and the major ideas and theories that researchers have looked into, and as well as what can be delved into further. And of course, the other resource I use has been the CiteSpace manual, and it's a really good guide into the different features of CiteSpace, and it can also help you if you ever get stuck or have any issues with the software. And so now we're going to be going into creating our very own CiteSpace map. Okay, so this is how the CiteSpace homepage looks like. You can see that there are a couple of key publications listed here, and you can use them as references for your own research as well. And so you'd click on agree. And so you would first need to create a new project. So if you click on new, you'll see a window that looks like this. And before you get started on creating this new project, it's important to create two folders, one for your project and one for your data directory, so that you can input into CiteSpace. So in this case, I've just added two different folders, CiteSpace input, where I've added the Web of Science files, and CiteSpace output, where I'll be getting my output files. So if I click on browse, I should be able to find it. Project home would be the output, and the data directory would be the input, where the Web of Science files are. So I'm just going to title it, I'll just call it Infant Development. And so over here, you'll have a lot of different options that you can use and customize. And over here, you can see the look back years parameter. So that refers to the amount of years that you would like a paper to reference to. So the year 5 would reference citations 5 years ago. So in this case, if I want to make it unlimited, I would do -1. And so over here, you have the link retaining factor. And if you have a network that's highly connected, then you want to make sure that the link retaining factor is a lower number. But in this case, I can just do -1. So that it's unlimited. And the maximum links per node can also be changed, especially if you feel like the network is quite dense when you visualize it. And so now you can click on save. And over here, you can choose this time ranges. I can change this to 2018 if I just want to see 5 years. And I can also change the years per slice. So if I change this to 2, then it would have 2 different years in slice. It would have 2018 and 2019 in one slice, and 2020 and 2021 in the next, and so on. And so here I can select for the title, the abstract, author keywords, and keywords plus. You can select all of them to search for all of the different terms. And for the node type, I'm just going to go with reference so that I can create a document co-citation network. I can also change the link strength or the similarity index. So I can choose cosine, PMI, dice, or Jacquard. And I can also change the scope to within slices or across slices. And it also looks at the G index as well, which is a measure of the citation strength of that author. So in this case, we're just going to keep the scale factor K as the default value of 25. And so now you can click on Go in order to see your map. And in these 2 boxes, you can see more information about the data that's being processed. For instance, there are 60 early access articles and 114 proceedings, paper, and articles, as well as 954 meeting abstracts. In the map, there's also 283 nodes, as well as 1,265 links. Now you can go ahead and click on Visualize. And you'll start to see the document co-citation map forming. It may take a while, so you may need to wait until the nodes stop moving. Okay, so now that your mapping is done, you can go ahead and go to Windows to the control panel. And you can change different aspects of this map. So if you go to node labels, if you lower the threshold, you're likely to see more node labels form. And if you increase it, you're going to see far fewer. You can also change the font size of these nodes, as well as the node size. And in order to create clusters from this map, you would then go to clusters, and then you could click on Find Clusters. In this version of the software package, the basic version, it doesn't have that capability. So I would just go here, which would also create a clustering map as well. And it says all-in-one clustering, optimizing layout and style. So here I can choose which of the sources to label the clusters, whether if I want to use the title words, the keywords, or the subject categories. So in this case, I'm just going to go with the title words. So I'm just going to say T. So now here, you can see a group of different clusters forming. And the really cool thing about CiteSpace is that it labels the clusters for you, unlike in VOS Viewer, where you sort of had to interpret each cluster and figure out what the theme of that cluster really is. And in CiteSpace, you can also change how the clusters are labeled based on their similarity measures. In this case, we're using latent semantic indexing. If you'd like to change it to log likelihood ratios, you could click on this. And you can see the cluster labels might change slightly on your map. And if you want to input your own cluster labels, you can click on user-defined cluster labels as well. And you can also compute different measures or analyses as well. So for instance, if I were to click on node centrality, it would compute the node's centrality for me. And you can see differences in the sizes of these nodes. And the node centrality tells you more about how many edges or links the node has. And the more links the node has, the more centrality it has. There are also sigma values, which measures the betweenness between temporal and structural aspects. So the burstness of that publication and its centrality. So the burstness would refer to the rate of change or the surge in that publication or citation. And it also measures an eigenvector measure of centrality as well. In this case, I'm just going to compute node centrality. And then I could also go to burstness to compute the burstness as well. So in this case, I can see that only one burst item was found with a minimum duration of 2 years. If I view that here, and I would just say only one reference has citation bursts. So in this summary, you can see that the Bailey Scales infant development paper has been having the strongest citation burst in 2019. So that means it had a surge of citations in that period of time. And if we were to decrease this number, the minimum duration to 1, you might find more burst items as well, as you can see here. Another interesting aspect to look at is the timeline that you can see. And with the timeline view, you can see the amount of co-citations over time. You can see that most of the co-citations have been seen in more recent years, since the 1970s and 80s. So you can go back to cluster view. So you can also create a summary. You can also create a summary report of this map. So if you go to summary and then click on summary report, and then you can say yes as you've completed all of these 3 things. And you can say that you would like to summarize all the clusters. So in this narrative summary, you can see all of the different labels in accordance with LSI and LLR, and their average years as well. And it also gives you silhouette values. So the silhouette values are measures of cohesiveness and how connected the nodes are within their own clusters. And you can see here the silhouette values are close to +1 in all of these clusters. So you can know that in each cluster, it's quite cohesive and highly connected. And you can see the names of each cluster. Cluster 0 is the largest cluster, and it goes in descending order. So postpartum period is a topic that a lot of documents go into in this co-citation network. You can also see the most cited members in this cluster. And at the bottom of this narrative summary, you can also see the citation counts of the different publications as well. And it also gives you values of the bursts and centrality as well. And finally, I'd also just like to highlight that in the CiteSpace 101 blog, there are a lot of interesting resources that you could use to figure out what network would be the best for you. In this case, if you change the link retaining factors, you can see that the networks are more sparse and they're not as tightly connected as seen here when the link retaining factor is unlimited. So if you'd like to see more distinct clusters, it's worth noting that the link retaining factor can be decreased. And you can also see how networks using the G index change the map as well as the top N change the map. And so that's all I have to show you about CiteSpace today. This was just a quick way to create a map.